Good morning. Today we're going to read another Chris Van Allsburg book. This is a little bit different than the one that we read yesterday, as the words in this book are limited. And so we're going to take a lot of time making some inferences about what is going on, what are the mysteries here in this book. Introduction. I first saw the drawings in this book a year ago in the home of a man named Peter Winders. Though Mr. Winders is retired now, he once worked for a children's book publisher, choosing the stories and pictures that would be turned into books. 30 years ago, a man called at Peter Winders' office, introducing himself as Harris Burdick. Mr. Burdick explained that he had written 14 stories and had drawn many pictures for each one. He'd brought with him just one drawing from each story to see if Winders liked his work. Peter Winders was fascinated by the drawings. He told Burdick he would like to read the stories that went with them as soon as possible. The artist agreed to bring the stories the next morning. He left the 14 drawings with Winders, but he did not return the next day, or the day after that. Harris Burdick was never heard from again. Over the years, Winders tried to find out who Burdick was and what had happened to him, but he discovered nothing. To this day, Harris Burdick remains a complete mystery. His disappearance is not the only mystery left behind. What were the stories that went with these drawings? There are some clues. Burdick had written a title and caption for each picture. When I told Peter Winders how difficult it was to look at the drawings and their captions without imagining a story, he smiled and left the room. He turned with a dust-covered cardboard box. Inside were dozens of stories, all inspired by the Burdick drawings. They'd been written years ago by Winders' children and their friends. I spent the rest of my visit reading these stories. They were remarkable, some bizarre, some funny, some downright scary. In the hope that other children will be inspired by them, the Burdick drawings are reproduced here for the first time. Signed, Chris Van Allsburg, Providence, Rhode Island. Archie Smith, Boy Wonder. A tiny voice asked, "Is he the one?" So take a look at this picture, and I want you to make an observation. What do you see in this picture? I see a boy sleeping. I see some shining lights here. There's a boat above his bed. It looks like it's nighttime. Now, what questions? Take a second to wonder. What are some questions that you have? For me, I'm thinking, what are these lights? Who is this boy? And now make an inference. What are some connections I can make between what I see and what questions I have? What can I answer? And so one inference I might make is that these glowing lights are like magical fairies that have come during the night to grant this boy a wish, or they're his dreams when he sleeps. Under the rug, 2 weeks passed, and it happened again. Again, take a look at this picture. What do you see? I see a man holding a chair over his head, and I see something under the rug, right? And I see that the table is moving. It looks like the lamp's gonna fall off. So what are some questions that I have? Well, naturally, what in the world is under the rug? What's going on here? Who is this man? Is this going to fall? I can make some inferences from what I know. I know that sometimes animals might get under the rug. And so maybe this guy, the inference that I would make is this guy was sitting here and suddenly there was a rat that crawled out of the wall and under the rug. And the rat's now trapped under the rug, so this old man is trying to hit him. A strange day in July. He threw with all his might, but the third stone came skipping back. Take a minute yourself and make an observation. What do you see? Take a second to have a wondering. What questions do you have? And then make an inference. What is going on? What story does this illustration go with? Missing in Venice. Even with her mighty engines in reverse, the ocean liner was pulled further and further into the canal. Again, what do you see here? What observations can you make? What questions do you have? And what inferences can you make about this picture? Another place, another time. If there was an answer, he'd find it there. What observations can you make from this picture? What do you see happening? What are questions you have? And what are inferences you can make? It kind of looks like there's a little castle over here, doesn't it? Uninvited guests. His heart was pounding. He was sure he had seen the doorknob turn. So what do you see in this picture? What questions do you have? And what inferences can you make? The harp. So it's true, he thought. It's really true. What observations, what are things that you see in this picture? What questions do you have? And what are some inferences that you can make? Mr. Linden's library. He had warned her about the book. Now it was too late. What do you see happening in this picture? What questions do you have? And what connections can you make? What's happening here? What inferences do you have? You can pause this if you need a second to think about it. The 7 chairs. The 5th one ended up in France. So what do we see that's happening in this picture? What questions do we have? And what inferences can we make? The 3rd floor bedroom. It all began when someone left the window open. What do you see in this picture? I see a bird coming off the wallpaper. What questions do I have? Well, what does the window being open have to do with this bird coming to life? And what are some inferences that I can make? Well, there's something magical going on, right? I can think maybe the wind was magical or there was some sort of spell that made the room come alive. Just desert. She lowered the knife and it grew even brighter. Again, what do you see? What questions do you have? And what connections can you make? Captain Torrey. He swung his lantern 3 times and slowly the schooner appeared. Oscar and Alphonse. She knew it was time to send them back. The caterpillars softly wiggled in her hand, spelling out goodbye. the house on Maple Street. It was a perfect liftoff. The end. So even though this book is a bit strange, I think it's kind of fun to look at the different pictures, and it's kind of like a writing prompt. You automatically start thinking, where did these pictures come from? What is the story about? So practice making some inferences today when you read by yourself, and ask your teacher if you have any questions.